My Gavanan Melonin, and well met indeed. I am Arachir Galadirthan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer. Welcome back to the next faction overview where we deal with the Haradrim. They're called the... I think they're just called Harad now, actually, if memory serves. But anyway, Harad. So, the starting size, army, and custom generals. Your starting size as of version 3, but now version 4. Oh, before I begin, let me just say, while these videos are still getting a lot of viewing, it is worth noting these videos are not intended to highlight the difference between version 3 and version 4. They are actually intended just as an aid to version 4. So if I forget that something was in version 3 and isn't in version 4, or I don't make mention of a change between the two, that doesn't matter in any way. The point is to try, if you've never played the game, this will tell you everything you need to know about Harad, or whatever faction, at the time version 4 releases. This video is recorded on the 22nd of February, and at this time, 2020, version 4 is not yet released. Anyway, back to what we're actually talking about. Starting size, Finabel, the radiant city, or glorious city, or like glowing city, or it's essentially what it means. And it is your only city, which is why I'm mentioning it. That is your capital and your sole location. You will note, however, though, you get two generals outside of Finabel, Warlord Musab to the west and Utbar to the east. And standing within is your faction leader himself, Serpent Lord Kuzaimah. And, oh, I've already pressed the spacebar. And there he is, in all his gloriousness. In terms of custom generals, though, I'm afraid, you don't yet get any. So the Black Snake Guard is your standard bodyguard unit, and Utbar, Musab, and Kuzaimah all are blessed with this. However, that is rather a good thing, because the default bodyguard for Harad is very good, and they're a good, reliable cavalry unit. They're very good in the early game, but they do drop away in the late game. But anyway, that's for the other half of the video. But the point is, at the moment, there are no custom generals, and the starting size of your army is... It's big enough, because of course you're going to be needing to do some conquest. So Musab has 4 trash early tier units, Utbar has exactly the same, but in Finabel you'll note you get 4 of your middle tier units. Southron as they are, as opposed to Haradrim, which denote your lower. You also do get a ship, or 2 in fact. You've got to pick a ship or 2. Admiral Wakas, it was Wakas, wasn't it? Yes. He has a couple of longships, which are the only ship that you get. Are they called longships? Yes. Harad don't get the second tier of ship, I don't believe. Hold on, we should be able to check if one thinks correctly. Yeah, I believe you only get 1 tier of ships. You're not a massive sailing nation, but you do get ships. I should put that down, actually, because not every faction gets ships. And I didn't deal with the ships in the Dol Amroth video, did I? Ah, oh well. That's all right. They get the same ships as Gondor, so we'll cover it when we do Gondor. Anyway, so that's the starting size. No custom generals as yet. So the area that you start in is just a wide, flat plains, really. There's a bit of a hill line between this province here, Shafra, moving into Haruzan, and you can note that the hills progress through there. I'm not sure if this is one of the provinces that I've set the green book for yet. No. So the green books will tell you, if you're ever wondering what type of terrain you are in, the green books will list that terrain. But do note that Harad Waith, for example, is the green book for about 9 provinces. So when I actually come to do it, at the bottom of that there will be Haruzan province, hills or forest or grassland or barren or whatever. I can tell you though that I do happen to know that the terrain for all of Harad up to Shafra, so not including Umbar, and then curling all the way around here, curling all the way up to Mataram, and then through Mordor and up to Dor Norhak, is all the Barren resource, which will become important later on. But just as a little side note in version 4, this applies to every faction, your troops no longer train faster or slower depending on the terrain type, and instead the terrain type now affects how fast your culture in your city grows. So Harad have an affinity for Barren. It's only a really minor change, it's like 0.5% or 1% at best, but it means that Harad, for example, will get much faster culture in the cities and towns down here in Harad and then Khand and Mordor and through up to Dor Norhak, because you are a nomadic people, and so barren landscapes and just non-heavily wooded or hilly areas are ideal for you. Obviously grassland is also fairly useful, but it only now plays a little effect on the culture of your cities, and has been reduced to a sort of backseat or more minor feature rather than rather than a nuisance, which is what it was before, really. Of course, you've got the River Harnan running to the north of your province, as you will note. You can cross it at Gobel Mirlond, you can cross it at Finabel, and you can cross it at the end there with the 2 bridges leading in to the Amrun region, or Kajba. But you cannot cross it anywhere else. So you've got quite a nice defensive point from anything that might come from the north if you need it. And of course it's a sailable river, which means that the coast, all of these provinces are considered coastland for any coastal requirements, but I don't think Harad get any coastal requirements. Rebels, you will note, of course, your whole early gameplay is all about rebels. Tal al-Jaf right through, I'm not going to name them, you can see on the map. Every single region around you is rebel, apart from the Far 3 to the west, where Umbar resides, or the Aradanaim, or the AA as we shall call them, and then of course Dol Amroth away to the north. Remember, these are all taken at turn 2, so the auto expansion has already taken place. So this is what you will be faced with. There are no real immediate custom battle maps for Harad. You do get your own unique campaign strategy models. You'll note there, Finabel is indicating that. No one else has that type of model. Cand and Rune have their own design, and so does Mordor and the AA. So you do get your own custom map, campaign model, but you don't get custom battle maps. The nearest custom battle map for you is all the way to the north at Gobel Tolfalas. And then, of course, up into the north there. So you'll have fairly stock battle maps for much of your early game. Neighbours and diplomacy, then, you start neighbouring, of course, no one other than rebels, but you do start allied to the Alcoholics Anonymous and the Variags of Cand and Mordor. You are already at war with Dol Amroth and Gondor. So your enemies are to your north, your allies are all around. You can feel it in your fingers. You feel it in your toes. Your allies are all around. Economy, buildings, and diplomat, then. Hang on. I've got diplomacy and diplomat mixed up. Moving on to then your economy and your nation as a whole, you are a little restricted if memory serves. So we are under the city tab at the moment. You cannot go above city. So Finabel is the largest you will get. There is a tier above that, which is large city, but you don't get that. Likewise, if memory serves again, in the Stronghold. No, you do get all the way to Stronghold, sorry. So it's only that top tier of city. So you don't get the very highest tier of city, which will affect you a little economically in the later stages of the game, because you just won't get the top tier of a lot of the eco buildings like markets. I keep clicking away from Finable. Markets and public health style buildings. You won't get all the top versions of those, which can be a bit of a pain. Your diplomat comes from the Black Palace. The Black Palace was actually built by the Dark Numenorians when they held a stronger hand over the lands of Harad, but since their withdrawal to the deep south, the nomadic folk of Harad took up residence in this almighty palace. From here, the High Chieftain holds his court and plays up to the part of king, and it gives you your diplomat. For other diplomats, you will need to go all the way over to Umbar, where you'll get one from there, or it's just capital cities of each nation, and they always come from these unique buildings. Every capital city in every nation has a unique building. Mostly they are denoted by these circular images on the building browser, which does irk me a little bit, but there's no way I'm going to be able to reproduce that in this style, so this is just the best you've got. But that's where your diplomat comes from. Harad are one of the nations that get the merchants, and they are now called merchants. Many of you pointed out last time they were called princesses, and that is just because I hadn't yet amended it. For reasons totally unbeknownst to me, Third Age Total War had merchants, but it renamed all of their tooltips and all of their names to call them princesses, and I just don't understand why. They were absolutely merchants in all but name. And so I just had to go through and rename everything to merchants. But you are a nation that get merchant, but you will have noted there that it only comes from the second tier of the Merchants Guild, which means you'll only ever get one merchant. But they do bring in a good amount of money. They have no upkeep. They cost 550 gold coins, so it's a one-off payment. And to be honest, if you find one of the best resources, which I'm in so two minds about telling you, one resource is significantly better than the other. Of course, Mithril is the absolute best resource, but we deliberately removed that from the playable zone, so you can't actually trade Mithril. But there is one resource that is better than all the others, and if you keep your merchant on that, eventually he could be earning about, maybe at best, 600 to 1,000 gold coins, but that will take a lot of turns. It is just a really minor feature, and of course other nations may kill off your merchant by surrounding it with their army, or they may use their own merchants to buy yours out, because that is still a feature. So you're a minor player on the merchant table, but it's just a little added benefit, really, isn't it? Other guilds, if we return to Finabel, you also, of course, get the Warriors Guild, as everybody does. For you, it's called the Hasharin, and then Master Hasharin, and all of these images are courtesy of Anno... Oh, I can never remember. I'm sure it's 1404, isn't it? Because 1707 came out first, then 1404. But anyway, so thank you to them for letting us use these. They give you a mellow weapon bonus and then a morale bonus in the higher tier. Remember, with all guilds, only one of the second tier can be built in your empire, and if you're lucky enough to get the third tier, only one can be built worldwide. The AI will beat you to that. But we've spoken about it as a team, and we've decided not to restrict the third tier to humans only. We're happy as it is, and it also creates a nice and I think quite exciting and enjoyable feature in that sometimes you will find the third tier of those guilds in towns you're attacking, and then it gives you a greater purpose to siege those towns. You also get the Horse Breeders Guild, which is just called the Horse Breeders Guild. And I've added this line at the bottom because, as I said, it didn't show you what it does. But what the Horse Breeders Guild actually does is speed up the replenishment of all cavalry within the settlement that you build it in, which is fan-bloody-tastic. So even though it doesn't list that as a benefit because it can't list that as a benefit, but essentially if you build the Horse Breeders Guild and then build the stables, you're getting somewhere, I think it's about 33% faster replenishment on any horse or cavalry unit. And it is every cavalry unit your nation can train. Hummingbird has been very thorough and gone through and ensured it applies to all cavalry for the nations that get it. So the Horse Breeders Guild is very, very useful without giving the extra experience bonus if you're going for cavalry, which as Harad you often will. You're quite a good cavalry player. I think in terms of buildings, that's everything we hope to cover. You get the town health buildings now, which gives you public health bonuses. And you can see there, bonus due to happiness, retraining costs are reduced courtesy of these, but more importantly, the town health buildings now almost always will give your generals traits and ancillaries that improve their doctor ability, which means more of your forces will survive after each battle. So the public health buildings are really, really, really useful if you are finding that you are struggling militarily and you need to make every battle count. The Doctor trait is one of the most powerful traits in the game. It is difficult to put into words how you... Well, it's not. I can put it into words. It's incredibly useful when 25% of all of your deaths come back after the battle, for example, whereas without the trait, maybe only 5% do. That could potentially be the difference of 50 to 250 extra casualties resurrecting at the end of each battle. So the town health buildings do have a good use. Do be sure to use them. Master Builders, of course, everybody gets the Master Builders. You are not a nation that get the Advanced Blacksmith. And the Advanced Blacksmith I will talk about with a nation that do actually get it. Of course, you not being one. That's why it doesn't show up for yourselves. I'll have to double check that actually, because I could be wrong about that. But it wouldn't be a gallery video without me being wrong about something. But I will make note to myself, Advanced Blacksmith. I'm writing it down right now, which is a waste of time for you all. But sometimes you just have to roll with the punches, you know. But I will write it down, and I will be sure that from this point forward, the Advanced Blacksmith will be covered. But I don't think Harad get it. It's either Harad don't, or and possibly Dol Amroth did, and I just didn't mention it. But if you're watching all of these videos, you'll learn what it is soon enough. Anyway, so moving on to gameplay events then. Well, Harad have one very key gameplay event, if I can just hopefully without too much noise change the page. And that is, of course, the uniting of the clans. This time, rather than trying to guess what the benefit is, I actually went and wrote it down like a good YouTuber. So, you start with only Finabel, and you need to unite the tribes and clans of Harad to fight under your banner. You are the Black Snake tribe. I'm fairly certain it mentions that somewhere. I can't quite remember if it is written anywhere or not. Oh well, in any event, you're the Black Snake of the tribes, is your name. The other tribes include the Muhad, the Trollmen, the Hashari, and then finally the Mumak Training Muhad, if you will, for want of a much better name. You unite these tribes by conquering settlements. So, after your first 4 settlements are held by you, and it can be any 4 settlements you like, it does not matter which, but as soon as your nation has 4 settlements to your name, you will unlock the Muhad tribesmen. You get the tribesmen and the beastmasters. At that time, you will also get a one-off army that will spawn and join you, and they will be made up of Muhad units, and they will have a custom Muhad general. So he'll have a Muhad unit as a bodyguard. You'll see these units obviously better in the second half of the video. Once you then reach 8 regions, you will unlock the Troll Men, which is a Troll Men. There's warriors, I think there's a javelin throwing one, and then there's now also a champion one as well. So there are now 3 Troll Men units as opposed to the original game's 1. And you unlock them when you have 8 regions. Now, if we just segue into the regions around you, you will note that if you claim all of the regions of the south, that will get you to 4 provinces. So Tal al-Jaf, Karagmir, and Korondaj. You could then take Shafra, possibly beat Khan to Kruk Mahur, take Amrun and Estala, and you'll have your 8. So it's very possible to get 8 regions in the south altogether. Of course, Kand might beat you to 1 or 2 of those. The Ardenayim might beat you to Karagmir, and Dol Amroth might take Halthanur or Tir Thraid. But you should still be able to get 8. Then, once you've got 12 regions, the Hashari will join you. But note, 12 regions, you're now in the realms of needing to attack someone else in order to get that number. So you'll be very, very, very lucky if you can get 12 rebel regions. It would require everyone around you to do nothing and you to just go on a mad blitz, which you just simply won't be able to do. So you'll have to attack someone to get your Hashari units, because you need 12 settlements. And then finally you need 15 settlements to show the tribesmen who control the Mumakil that you are a force to be reckoned with, and they will then join you as well once they've seen your power. That's the point of this script. It is not about subjecting the clans to your might, because you're all nomadic and you all move around, and you actually holding land doesn't really matter too much. It's more about you saying, look how powerful and wonderful our lives are, please come and join us, in a watered down version, and that is what it is. So at 15 regions you can then train Mumakil. Now, Mumakil, however, only come from Finabel and Karagmir, so they are heavily restricted, but in the hands of a player they are divine. That's not a word. They are incredibly powerful in the hands of you, but they're not very good when the AI uses them, so it's a bit of a playoff. But if you get Mumakil, you will just wipe the board. You will be able to kill everyone and everything so easily. Hashari only come from Baron provinces, and as I previously mentioned, Baron is everything south of the Harnan and east of the Harnan, or the end of the Harnan, curling up to Mataram, through Mordor, every province in Mordor, and up to Dor Norhak. So the Hashari will not be that readily available. They won't come from really anywhere up in Gondor or Dol Amroth, so you'll always have to pull them from the back, I am afraid. The lower tier of the Muhad unit is available everywhere, but the Beastmaster version, which I believe is the mounted camel rider, only comes from, again, Baron regions, which is all down here in the south. The Troll Men only come from Harad. Now, Harad, I'm not going to list every region that means Harad, but generally, if you are down here in the south, in the Haradrim and Haradwaith kind of areas, you'll get Troll Men down here. So they are a little more readily available, but the Hashari and the Mumakil are restricted. That accounts for all of Harad's actual gameplay features. There aren't any other scripts. In fact, there are no scripts, actually, that affect you. That one is all done through... Oh, no, it is scripting. Minor. That's just semantics. That is the only real script that affects you. Of course, I have not mentioned it with Dol Amroth, but the garrison script is still a feature for every faction. You get garrison troops by building the armory. Once you build the armory, you will get 2 garrison units spawn every time your city is attacked. There is then a second tier of the armory called the militia armory, and that one will give you normally 1 extra unit, and it will make all the units that spawn better. They'll have higher, they'll have an upgraded weapon, they'll have upgraded armor, and they'll come with experience points. So the second tier of the armory doesn't really give you loads more garrison troops, it just makes the ones you do get better. And you can build it anywhere, and you'll get them anywhere. There might be 1 or 2 bugs some people have pointed out. It's a really, really lengthy script. Every single individual region has to be coded to spawn its specific garrison troops when the building is built. And so I think there might be 1 or 2 leftover problems here or there. So sometimes you might not get a garrison. And if you don't, please do come and tell us somewhere, because then obviously that's a cracking contribution, and we don't have to scroll through 200 entries and make sure that it's all set up right, because that takes so long and is such a minor benefit. We'd rather polish other things, to be honest. I shall just be honest with you. So if you do come across a region that doesn't get a garrison troop, then please do let us know. Turning to the difficulty for Harad then, easily, Harad has got to be... I mean, some people took qualm with my saying Dol Amroth as a 3, and they suggested Dol Amroth should really be a 5. And perhaps upon reflection, maybe I scored them too low, but I stand by what I've said. Harad, I would happily put at a 1. Easily at a 1. At the start of the game, you have almost no enemies to really worry about. You can just go la-di-da, skip around, take up all the rebel provinces. The hardest part is beating your allies to them. And then, hopefully, the Alcoholics Anonymous will arrive at Dol Amroth long before you do, so they'll keep them busy. Khand will almost certainly encroach from the east as well, but there is a chance your campaign could become a little harder if Khand side with the Blue Wizards. But do note that at that point, whilst yes, you suddenly get an enemy right at the back of your nation, Mordor and Rhûn also get an enemy right at the back of their nations, so Khand's forces will be divided 3 ways trying to deal with all of those threats, and Khand may well accidentally break their own alliance with Dol Amroth and Gondor, so it's very difficult to say how the effect of the Blue Wizards will change your campaign, but definitely note Harad is one of the easier campaigns. You're surrounded by too many allies, really. The enemy that you actually face has too many enemies to face, and so when in your hands, a strategic-minded person, you will be able to do very well with them. The difficulty with Harad and the fun I have always suggested with Harad, even in Third Age Total War to be honest, comes from attacking your allies instead of your actual enemies. Turn on Mordor, bring them down, take out Khand long before the Blue Wizards arrive, or show your supremacy to the AA and claim what is rightfully yours. But certainly if you play as intended, Harad is definitely a 1 in terms of difficulty. And just as a reminder, 1 is the easiest, 5 is the hardest. So that's all to say on the campaign map. Apologies, there's not many visuals for this, are there? There's just me sort of giving you motion sickness. But now we shall jump over to the battle map and see what your units and your roster looks like. Welcome then to the battle map, and our quick overview and creation of a tagline for Harad's military arm would be unarmoured infantry and cavalry. Now, granted, that's quite a wide and relatively vague assessment, but Harad's key feature is that they are quite an unarmoured nation. There's just hardly any units that have any really armour stats to speak of. So you're very good against enemies who are armour-piercing, like Isengard, for example. But it does make your whole nation rather susceptible to arrow fire. You are not very good against nations that do well with bows. But you couple that with having a larger than average cavalry section, as you can see, and arguably the greatest cavalry unit in the entire known world, if used properly, the Oliphants. But if we start, as we always do, with your first tier. Now do remember, I'll just say this is a caveat every time, the barracks event comes in at a certain point. Some units are restricted behind it, but the units are just laid out in this talkover, this assessment, in terms of their actual tiers. Some of them may come before the barracks event, some of them may come after, but in terms of where they're actually aligned in terms of your roster, these are the tiers of the roster. So, with that out of the way, let's deal with one of the few units you get that can be trained everywhere, regardless of any settlements you own, and that is the standard Haradrim Spearman. So, 4-4. Not very good at all. If you remember that Dol Amroth's starting unit, and Gondor's by extension, the Gondor Militia, starts with a defense of around 6 to 10, I believe, and an attack, I think, of 5 or 6. You will note that Haradrim Spearmen don't have the same skill. Their defense is so poor. Do note, though, they can do a Shiltrum, which does lower the impact of being flanked, because they can't properly be flanked when they're in Shiltrum. They do, of course, get a bonus against mounts because they are spearmen. Their movement speed is higher than most other factions as well. Harad have a very fast roster, so you'll be able to chase down people. You'll be able to close with archers quicker, because, of course, they are the bane of your life. Their morale is average, their morale response is impetuous. So Harad were respooled and reteched some time ago to be a very aggressive nation. You will find across the board your armor is low, your general defense is often quite low, but your morale response will often be very high, so your nation takes morale shocks well, even if their actual morale is relatively low. So they deal with shocks very well, but they don't actually have a very high overall morale anyway. They're not really behind the cause, they just happen to be good warriors, if that makes sense. is how I see it in my head. Their recruitment cost varies because they're also a mercenary unit, so it's difficult to show you. In fact, it's impossible to show you. But they do have a counterpart, the Haradrim Archers. They are your first and one of only 3 archer units you get, or, well, dedicated foot archers anyway. You get a couple of cavalry. 3 melee, 3 missile, with only a 2 defense. Their melee and their missile, well, their missile is quite good, so that's not too bad. A 3 missile is a good starting missile stat, but the fact that they only have 2 defense means that they will die to arrow fire like there's no tomorrow, and if the enemy actually closes onto them, they're gone, they're dead. In melee, they will just do nothing. In melee, they are simply bodies to die and nothing more. So do watch out for that. Let's turn that off. Then the next set of units that you get that can be everywhere are the Southron units. So there's the 2 Haradrim and the 4 Southron. We'll start again with the archers because we're over here. The Southron archers have a 5 melee and a 4 missile, so better in all regards in that stat. Their defense is only 5 though, so still only 1 defense better than the low Haradrim spearmen. So again, your archers are not good in melee. You're not an archer nation at all, and you have very typical archers, i.e. they're good if you can keep them out of battle, and they're awful if you try and get them in the fray. Their movement speed is only 105, though, you will note. The Haradrim archers being... the 2 Haradrim units are faster than the Southrons. Their range is 170, which again is not that great, and only 24 missiles overall. Average morale response and morale. Not the greatest unit, but much better than the Haradrim archers. Next up, the Southron Warband, which is a direct upgrade of the Haradrim Spearmen. They have a 6 attack instead of a 4. They have a 4 charge instead of a 3. And they have an 11 defense instead of a 4. So almost a 3 times improvement on their defense, making them the base unit you really want to train. Only get the Haradrim if you really can't get anything else, or for civic duties. Those units would be good as garrison forces in places that won't be attacked, because they are cheap to train, so you can quickly get... they're also the first units you get, so they'll be the first to become free upkeep. So they're a good garrison unit and little more, really. Southron Warband, average morale and response, 105%, as I've already mentioned. They're spearmen, so they get a benefit against cavalry. And they can shield wall, which is arguably a superior formation to the Schiltrum. Next up, if it's cavalry you need to deal with, and if you're going up against the forces of Khand, Dol Amroth, Khand or Dol Amroth really, then you'll definitely be needing anti-cavalry, and you should be going up against Dol Amroth or Khand at some point in the campaigns if you play Harad a lot. And so Southron Pikemen coming in early doors is a fantastic unit. They are one of your main bulwark units at the start of the game. Pikes, I've already mentioned, are OP because of their animation. So we have to lower their defense and attack stats to compensate. So even though they may look like they are considerably inferior to the Warband, they are significantly superior to the Warband. Don't be fooled by the stats. Always, in my head, what did I used to do? I can't remember. I've not thought about pikemen for so long. Oh no, I can't think of the way that I would equate the OP animation to their actual stats. But just note, pikemen are good. We'll come back to the Muhad, but next up is your first dedicated cavalry unit, the Southron Lancers. You will get a lot of these. They'll be readily available all over the place, and if you get the Horse Breeders Guild, which you always will, you'll be able to pump these out like Rohan pumps out scouts. They're reliable in deserts, or that needs to be retooled to be sort of barren regions. Average morale response. Their total defense is only 7, but their charge is 7, and their attack is 6. So they're very good on the charge. They're not good to be kept in melee. They also look quite nice. I like the horse's padding. I think it just looks... it's got a nice quality to it. But charge them in, run them away, charge them in, run them away, ad infinitum. Their secondary attack is 2 lower than their main, so they're, again, better on the charge. And then we turn to the Muhad then. So those are the 4 units that you will get everywhere. And those then are the 6 units that you will get no matter what. So it doesn't matter how many regions you have, you'll always be able to get those 6 units. There are a couple of other units that are available no matter what, but they come in later on. But now we turn to mostly units that you will get through uniting the clans, or the tribes. Uniting the tribes. Uniting the clans is what Rune do. Uniting the tribes is what Harad do. So Muhad tribesmen, I spoke about these. These are the units that you'll get when you've got 4 regions. The Muhad tribesmen are available everywhere, so once you've got 4 regions, that's it, you always get these. Note that if you drop below 4 regions, or below 8 regions, or below 12, or below 15, you don't lose the tribe. Once it has joined you, that's it, that trigger is terminated, and you will get them for the rest of the game. It isn't like the High Elves, as we'll come to, obviously, when we deal with the High Elves, where if they lose Linden or Imladris, then they lose the recruitment options. You don't have that as Harad. You always get them once you've met the requirement. They are a Javelin unit with a 9 missile and 4 javelins to throw, so a very good Javelin unit. 65 meter range is fantastic with a high accuracy as well. They'll be pinning them down like the best of them. They are a good, excellent Javelin force. And note as well, they're not only a good, excellent Javelin force, they're a fantastic melee force as well. They are sword and shield once the fray is done. Or no, I think they might be spearmen, actually. Does it say carrying a javelins and a shield? They have something else. I think it is spearmen. But their melee attack is 6, their defense is 13. They are a really good melee unit once they finish with their javelins. Whereas a lot of javelin units sometimes tend to be a bit poor once they've thrown them. These guys are not those. So once they've finished with their javelins, get them involved. They will do some excellent damage. Note they cost about 820. The Southron units are ranging sort of around 600, late 700. So you are cheaper than Dol Amroth and Gondor. You will have more troops than Dol Amroth and Gondor to play with in terms of raw numbers, not necessarily actual variety. And that's the end of your second tier. So then we jump up to tier 3, where we're likely to have some units restricted by the barracks event. Which ones, I'm just not going to try and guess anymore, because I used to get it wrong so often. So first of all, coming in are the Camel Riders. Camel Riders are better than Southron Lancers, but they only come from a desert region, which is the south. And again, I'll respec that to read Barren region. We'll probably extend the Barren region to include Horondor, now that I think about it, because that's where you're going, and at the moment Harad's roster is heavily restricted, and I don't think it needs to be. But they are a good cavalry unit with the added benefit that camels are good against other cavalry. So they are very good against Dol Amroth, for example, who field a lot of cavalry. They even get a direct bonus against Amrothian Swan cavalry, which is a unit, which is the horse that the Knights of the Silver Swan and I believe the Bodyguard unit use. So they get a direct benefit against the elite cavalry of Dol Amroth. Their movement speed is 100%, though, so they don't move any faster. Their attack is 6, their charge is 5, their defense overall is 13. But do watch out, though. Camels do tend to have an odd... they're dealt with differently in the game. I'm not sure what it is. I think they have a larger hitbox. But camels tend to die quicker than cavalry in melee. So always pull them out... than horses, sorry. So always pull them out and charge in again. Don't keep them in melee. I know that applies to all cavalry, but it applies especially to camels. There's something about camels and the way the engine treats them that they just have a real tendency to die really, really easily. And I think it's because they probably have a larger hitbox. That's all I could guess, to be honest. So just watch out for that. Next up, another unit. Do note the Camel Riders don't require any settlement requirements. They are available to you from the start of the game, or from the start of the barracks event whenever they come in. They just come only from desert regions. Then the Muhad Beastmasters. So the Muhad Beastmasters is just a mounted version of the Muhad Tribesmen, and their stats reflect that. So their melee attack is a little greater, the leverage being up on a horse helps, and their missile attack is 10. They can form a shooting circle, which is a little less important when all you're throwing is javelins, but still, it's an option. Their cost isn't all that high. I'm now wondering if actually perhaps I've put the Muhad Tribesmen in the wrong tier, but I don't think so. Perhaps these ones are in the wrong tier, that's possibly why. But total offense of 13, missile of 10 as already mentioned, good morale, average morale response. They're slightly slower than horses, so they will be chased down. They get a bonus against other mounts because they are camels. They have a 65 meter range and an average accuracy, but they do get 5 javelins, so that always helps. And they are effective against armor. So they are one of your armor-killing units. Note that the Tribesmen aren't, but the Beastmasters are. But you will have seen Beastmasters come from a desert region only because they ride on camels, and camels only live in those regions. Then, at this tier, which you might find surprising, are the Serpent Archers, your mounted cavalry archer. And that's just because their stats don't warrant them moving up a tier. They have a total defense of only 14, so only 1 greater than, in some cases 2 greater than the units of the tier beneath them. Although there's Southron archers, the disparity between the Southron archers and the warband and the pikes is insane. But anyway, serpent archers, there's a blurring of the lines in Harad's roster is what we're learning here. But they are just standard cavalry archers. Cavalry archers are very, very useful, but they require a lot of micromanagement. They're not good in melee ever, partly because of the formation they take, always makes them suffer. But the formation they take is necessary for firing against archers, or they die so much quicker if they were in the normal queued up formation like the cavalry around them, for example. But cavalry archers, if you can micro them, very, very useful, because the enemy of course can't chase you down, but you've got to make sure you're running them away, because the game's auto skirmish feature isn't very good, and so it's better to keep an eye on them yourself. They have 130 meter range, so they're going to be outclassed by all foot archers. Their missiles are only 30, their missiles are 30, which is good, not only. The movement speed is slightly higher than normal cavalry, so they should be able to run away a bit better. And they get bonuses in deserts for fighting in deserts. And they don't like fighting in forests or snow. That's the same for almost all of Harad, because of course there is no snow in Harad. It never snows here, so snow is alien to them, and they don't like it. Charge bonus of 6 though, so once they finish with their arrows, they're not too bad joining in. Then we come to the troll men, because the troll men are the ones that come in once you have 8 provinces. And they start with the troll men warriors, and troll men warriors are a berserker style unit really, but they happen to have the benefit of a shield. But you will note they have 2 hit points. They're one of few units that do. Their total defense is 14, but of course with 2 hit points that's essentially 28. Making them quite superior warriors. Their attack is 12 and their charge bonus is 6, and they frighten enemy infantry as well. They are very good on the morale and impetuous on the response, and they are slightly faster than the standard infantry, or the standard. They're a really good warrior. They're quite costly, and they only come from Harad itself, not desert regions, just Harad, which it should say. Oh, it says desert region, but it should say Harad. I'll have to change that as well. Polish. But otherwise they are just sword and shield unit, but they're so aggressive you wouldn't want to use them defensively. Get them flanking in, get the benefit of that high charge, or that high attack coupled with that charge, and the fact that they frighten enemies, and you'll be able to break enemy units with ease. They are supported by another javelin throwing unit. Harad really giving Enid Wythe a run for their money in terms of javelin masters. 10 attack, 12 missile attack, and a 12 total defense. So they're slightly worse in melee than their Trollmen warrior brethren, but of course they've got a javelin to throw at the enemy first anyway, and then once they finish with their javelin, they are essentially just the spear version of their comrades to their left. So you've got an anti-cavalry version and an anti-infantry version, and both of them are fearsome. But you will note that the Trollmen hunters don't scare enemy infantry, but they pay off for that by essentially scaring enemy cavalry by being much better against cavalry. So you've got one that's anti-infantry, one that's anti-cavalry. They come in, as I say, when you have 8 regions unlocked. And then we turn to the Hashari. The Hashari blades to begin with. You will note straight away that they can hide anywhere. So they're one of your sneakiest units, along with their sisters, the Shadows. The Hashari blades and shadows only come in when you have 12 regions. They can hide anywhere, they get bonuses in deserts. Their attack is 15 and their charge is 8. They are a flank unit. Particularly useful to hide next to the enemy lines where the enemy doesn't think they will be, and then pop out of nowhere, charge the enemy, get a huge bonus and make them break. Their total defense is 14, but note they don't have a shield, and as I've already mentioned, the armor stat is quite low. So if they are being shot by arrows, their total defense is actually only 6. Which is very low. So do keep them out of arrow fire and keep them in melee where they can use that defense skill to supplement their low armor. Their morale is very good, their morale response is good, their movement speed is faster than most other infantry. There aren't very many units that do run at 110%, so they should be able to chase down anything really. They're a very good sword unit, coupled with the hiding ability makes them fantastic flankers and ambushers. And they are supported by your last ground archer, the Hashari Shadows, which if I had the sound on, you will note are female-voiced, I believe. And they can hide anywhere as well. They have a melee attack of 9, so not as good as the blades, obviously, but their missile is 7, which is fantastic. Note that human rangers, one of the best archer units that most human nations can get, have usually a 6 missile attack, so they're slightly better than the rangers of other nations. Their total defense is 12, so try and keep them out of fights, though. Particularly try and, again, don't let them get shot. But you'll note there, the keen-eyed amongst you, they have poison arrows now. So they will reduce the morale of anyone they shoot their arrows at, which means that the Hashari are your morale-destroying units. Because, first of all, the Hashari shadows will pop up out of nowhere, which will make the enemy think, oh god, there's a unit over there. There wasn't a unit over there 2 minutes ago. And their morale will be weakened. The shadows will then litter the area with poison arrows, which will further reduce the morale of the enemy as they see people around them throwing up and wounds growing green on people's arms and all kinds of horrors, alongside the death that comes with being shot in the head with an arrow. And then, just as the time is right and the enemy's morale is wavering, they're near to breaking, the blades pop up on the other side, charge into the enemy, and it is done and dusted. Together, they make a fantastic morale-breaking duo, and that is their sole purpose, really. They used to be your very high-attack flanking units, and they still are, but their main purpose is to break morale now. You should use them in that way. They only come in, as I've already said, when you have 12 regions. Then we come to your elite units, and we'll deal with the trollmen first because they are also restricted, so you won't get the champions unless you already have those 8 regions, as we've already said. They are a pure berserker unit. They've got a shield on their back, but they actually have two-handed swords. They get a bonus against cavalry, they're effective against armor, they frighten nearby enemy infantry, they charge without orders, they've got a good charge of 9 and an attack of 13. Their total offense is 19, but do note again, their armor is only 7, so watch out for arrow fire. They have 2 hit points as well. They are, however, locked to Harad, again, as I say, the lower southern regions, but their morale is excellent and locked. They will not run away unless you tell them to. Which is a boon and a curse, so watch out for that. Their morale response is impetuous. They deal with shocks very well. They're very costly, but they are one of the best berserker units the game has, which is probably suitable for a top 10 list, really, isn't it? Berserker units, actually. But they are definitely one of the best. The Nazkai, obviously, probably give them a run for their money with the bombs that the Nazkai throw. And the actual Berserker of Isengard is a fantastic unit, but the Trampions with their 2 hit points and all of their ancillary bonuses, they really are a fantastic Berserker. Lastly, the Serpent Bladesmen. The Serpent Bladesmen are your elite, available everywhere foot units. They're the first unit to really break into the high defenses with an armor that's actually fairly good. Their morale is very good, their morale response is good. They are just a really sort of good, solid sword and board unit. They are not as elite as they used to be in the base game. I'm not sure Serpent Bladesmen even existed, actually. Wasn't it only Serpent Cavalry? But they're not a fantastic heavy unit. They're just a good, dependable late game unit, and their cost sort of reflects their eliteness in relation to your roster. Remember, costs are totally relevant and based on your roster as a whole, and not on other nations' rosters. So even if the Serpent Bladesmen, for example, are worse than, I don't know, let's say for argument's sake, they're worse than Gondor Infantry, which I don't think they are, but they might be. And yet Gondor Infantry might cost less than them, for example. That is relevant and relative to Gondor's roster. Each nation, their rosters are balanced to how for that nation in specifically. So try not to compare inter-nation costs. And lastly then, at this elite tier are the Serpent Guard, a famous Haradrim unit that many of you will know because they're a very good cavalry unit. They are also available everywhere. They have no restrictions. You don't need a certain number of regions. They're just your elite units. So if you stay in Finable for the whole game, you will still have a fairly sizable roster, but it's about half the size, I suppose, actually. Very good morale response. They're not locked, so they will run away. Their secondary attack is 8. Their main attack is 9, so that's not too bad. But their charge bonus is 13. They are fantastic charging cavalry. Not that great melee. All cavalry isn't that great melee, grant you, but they have so many bonuses telling you to charge in with them that you absolutely should. Also, they inspire your troops to do well, so try and charge enemy units that are locked down by your own forces, so that your forces then get a boost by the charge of the guard as well. And they have quite cool lances as well, I like that. They were relatively expensive though, so do watch out for that. That just means their upkeep will be, with the upkeep, try and think of it about half the cost of the recruitment. Otherwise, they are just a very good cavalry. So we'll deal with the bodyguard before we move on to the last. And the Black Snake Guard are your bodyguard. Thank you very much to Reforged for allowing us to use the model. It is, of course, just a sort of black variant of the Serpent Guard, but it looks very cool, and it separates them. They, like Dol Amroth, are a cavalry bodyguard, but they're few in number. They're just a better version all round than the Serpent Guard, so every stat is slightly higher. They get a bonus against other cavalry, so they're good against Dol Amroth. And I think actually in a 1-to-1, I believe the Black Snakes do take on the Swan Guard and win. So don't, if you're playing as Dol Amroth, don't charge their bodyguard unit, because yours will die. They're 120 movement speed as well, so they are really, really fast. There are only a couple of units in the whole game that are faster than Black Snake Guard. So their mobility is very, very high. And lastly then, we turn to the Mumakil, the Oliphants, who everyone keeps telling us, please get the better animation from Reforged, but we haven't done it yet. Mumakil are an archer cavalry unit predominantly. They inspire your forces whenever they're on the field. It says javelins thrown before charge because we can't change that text, but actually they fire arrows. They get a bonus against other cavalry and they frighten enemies, of course. Their morale is excellent, but it isn't locked. And they actually, one of the things that does kill them off is running amok. Their morale response is good. Their movement speed is very slow, though they're slow and lumbering beasts. And their total defense is 38 with 14 hit points. Which you might think, hold on Galu, that is so good. How can anything ever kill that? Well, I would just remind you that if we just take a brief moment to compare the hitbox, for example, of the simple and lowly horse to the Mumakil behind it. And note that the Mumakil's hitbox is the entire thing. So from the point of the tail right forward to the point of the tusk, and from the ground to the very top of this basket here. Not the man. The man doesn't count. Just like the horse, the rider's hitbox doesn't count. Oh no, sorry. Yes, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. So to the tip of the top of the gentleman standing on top, that is their hitbox, which means they are so easily hit by anything that anyone throws at them. They also can become surrounded very easily, and so you need to keep them on the move. They will die so easily to siege equipment as well. A catapult and a ballista can take them down normally in one shot. 2 shots possibly for the ballista, certainly 1 for a catapult, so watch out for that. Their melee attack though is fantastic, and they hit quite a lot of units around them, but their benefit, their use is in charging into and then through the enemy, because of course they do trample damage. So they will knock enemies down and wound them, which makes them easier to kill thereafter. Some of the enemies will actually die when they charge into them as well. But make sure that you actually charge into the enemy and not just run through the enemy. Because if they run through the enemy, they will still knock everyone over, but they won't actually attack them. So it will just be the knockover animation, but it won't do any of that high damage that they have listed. So you need to make sure you charge the enemy and not just charge through the enemy. Mumakil are very expensive. Their upkeep is very, very high. They can't get through gates, so they can cause some bugs and problems with siege maps and battles. Also, elephants in the base game can break down gates, and so Mumakil try to do that, and they can't actually do that, and it causes problems. So do watch out for that as well, because it will cause some problems for you. If you're fighting primarily against them, really. If you are controlling Mumakil, you're not going to try and use them to break down a gate, and you're going to know you can't take them into a city. But the AI will try and do that against you. So do watch out. And it's pertinent to talk about it here, because they're the Mumakil, so we're talking about them. Note that their missile attack is only 6, so the archers on top don't actually do a whole lot of damage, but the archers on top have an insane amount of arrows, because of course they can have loads of arrows littered around them. And so Mumakil can fire arrows almost for the entire game. So that's a point to watch out for as well. Right, we'll just let our army line up and we'll play the fun game of have a guess who you think we're up against next week. Now, it isn't anyone that as Harad you would normally fight. There's some green colouring in amongst the banners over there. If you've not played this game before, it's very simple. Simply look at what we're fighting and then type in the comments and say, I think you are fighting against X, Y or Z. It has no real purpose, but it's just to see how many of you really have played these different nations and can guess what the sprites all look like. And based on the AI has built that army itself. So based on how the AI has built the army... Oh, and look, there we go, proving my point instantly. One Mumakil has fallen to a single volley from catapults. So we've really got to watch out. We need to actually hand all of this over to the AI because Otherwise, they'll all just stand still and nothing will happen. So now that we've got them into position, they'll try and... Oh, look, the Mumakil are fantastically displaying why running into your own forces should never be a thing that you do, because you just knock everyone over. But if you didn't guess it, it was Breland, and I can understand why you might have struggled there, because they have hardly anything that makes them really stand out visually, from far away anyway. But here they are in all their Arnorian glory at the moment, which of course we shall discuss as we discuss Bree in the next episode. Some people have asked when will these videos be, and it always just blows my mind. As with the videos before, as with the version 2 overviews and the version 3 overviews, and I think even the version 0.5 overviews, I'm fairly certain we're on the 4th or 5th round of overviews now. There will be one of these a week, and I intend to release it on a Sunday every week. So that is the plan, Stan. And whenever I do the lore video, which is the first Monday of each month, that will be on a Monday, as the name suggests and implies. The catapults look so damn good, don't they? I love it when they fire as they charge in. Now, we won't win this, by the way, because I gave us equal amounts of money, but then I only just lined up my units. I just went through the list, clicked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if you can understand what I mean. And whereas they have all got armor upgrades and experience upgrades and weapon upgrades, so we're not gonna challenge them. But it is gonna be Bree next time. If you have any specific questions about Harad, please do post them in the comments below. I shall try and get around to them. And if you have any specific questions about version 4 in general, do let us know. And of course, these videos are subject to the odd change here or there, but that's fine. They're only minor changes. There won't be any core things like a unit suddenly isn't available or a new unit suddenly is available. Version 4 is really close now. We're really fine-tuning and polishing. So we will do a long period of testing before we release version 4, though. So we're close to having the installer ready, but then we will do some interior and internal testing first. Internal, not interior, before we release it to you all. But now, for now, that is all. So thank you very much for watching, and until we speak again, dear friends, Navarne den Pedamad Melonin, and farewell.